Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Video. It's about time we concluded this series of 25 things the English dub changed or censored, and since the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc-V dub has finally come to an end, if you don't live in the United States that is, we can finally tackle Arc-V's dub and take a look at some major and minor differences between its adaptation of the original Japanese version. I've done this segment for all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Animes up to Zexal, so definitely be sure to check out those videos as well if you haven't already. And without further ado, let's begin. 25 things the English dub of Arc-V changed or censored. I really hope you all enjoy. The first thing on these lists are always listing the obligatory character name changes that the dub makes. So here are a few. Yuzu Hiragi to Zuzu Boyle, Serena to Selena, Ruri to Lulu, the last name Kurosaki to Obsidian, Shun to Shay, Shuzo to Skip, Gongenzaka to Gong Strong, Reiji to Declan, Reira to Riley, Himika to Henrietta, Masami to Julia, Meru to Aura, Michio to Reed Pepper, Tsukikage to Moonshadow, Kachidoki to Iggy Arlo, Sayaka to Saya, and my absolute favorite, Gallagher to Lucas Swank. Lucas freaking Swank. You cannot make this stuff up. I honestly love it. Anyway, there are a few I missed, but those were most of the name changes that took place in the Arc-V dub. Somehow, all the U-Boys kept their original name, so at least that's good. In episode 2, there is a scene where Shingo throws a dart at Yugioh, which is supposed to, I guess, symbolize him picking his next opponent to duel against. The dart looks a bit different depending on which version you are watching. The dub edited in what looks to be a suction cup on the dart, I guess to give it a more safe and child-friendly looking appearance. This is honestly something I personally never would have seen, so kudos to the person who even noticed such a subtle edit like this one. Very early in the show, one of Yuzu's more memorable moments was smacking Yuya in the face with a fan after Yuya claims he would never want to date a woman like Yuzu. Take a listen to the differences in sounds between the two versions.
Of course not! As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing sweet about her, okay?
In the dub, the sound is quite clearly made to be a much more playful and less stinging, painful sound than an actual smack in the face. A minor change, but there is actually another scenario a little later on this list that makes this list because of the notable sound edit as well. In episode 117, during the Yugioh and Rin duel, there are multiple times we see the parasite bug that is brainwashing Rin attach itself to Rin's monster, Wind Witch Crystal Bell. However, any shots that zoom in or pan near the chest area of Crystal Bell are completely removed in the dub. I am assuming it's because the dub usually tries to remove things that can be perceived even remotely sexually or inappropriate, even though I never got that feeling from this episode or monster. Then again, I'm a 23-year-old guy who is usually pretty oblivious to things like that. Either way, this makes for about 3 or 4 quick scenes and camera pans that are completely removed in the dubbed version of this episode. Speaking of Rin vs. Yugioh and deleted scenes, in episode 116 when Yugioh finally sees Rin in person and reunites with her, we get a scene of Yugioh leaping at Rin overjoyed. However, this scene plays out a little different between the two versions. In the Japanese version, Rin knees Yugioh in the stomach. However, the English dub deleted this scene, and you just hear a comedic bopping noise similar to the one we heard when Yuzu hit Yugioh with the fan. There is no moment of Rin kneeing Yugioh in the stomach, and dub viewers are forced to assume that Rin slaps Yugioh or hits him in some kind of other way. In episode 98, while Reiji and others are tracking down Roger, there is a scene where a door is about to close and Reira is in the way. To save Reira, Reiji pushes him away, which causes him to fall to the floor. You know Reiji may not look it, but I feel he is one pretty jack dude under all those clothes. Anyway, this scene of Reira getting pushed by Reiji, geez, that came out wrong, you guessed it, is completely removed in the English dub. It's a common theme of Fire and Yu-Gi-Oh! Dubs having its color changed. Why this is a thing is beyond me, but the Arc-V dub is not safe from Fire censorship either. During a few different times throughout the show, we see Heartland on fire. Every time Heartland is shown to be on fire, the color of fire is purple instead of red or orange. Yu-Gi-Oh! Dubs really love changing things to the color purple. Episode 140 contains a few scenes that have very partial nudity, one with Yugioh and one with Yuzu. Both of these characters' appearances during these scenes undergo minor changes in the English dub. For Yugioh, he has more gray around the lower part of his body, as you can see on screen. Meanwhile, for Yuzu, she has a blinding, glowing light emitting off of her in the dub. These changes are not uncommon at all for Yugioh, as again, anything that can be perceived as even slightly sexual almost always gets censored or changed a little bit in the English version. Remember when I talked about how the flames and fire in Yugioh is almost always changed to purple? Well, there was actually one instance where the flames were changed to a more pinkish color than a purple color. Thrilling. In episode 34, after Sora pretty much obliterates Heartland's duel field during his duel against Shun, we see the action field is on fire. The flames are red in the original version of this scene, but the dub actually changes these flames to pink. In all seriousness, I don't really have an answer as to why they changed them to pink in this scene, compared to all the other fire-related scenes throughout the years, almost always getting the purple treatment, but regardless, it's a pretty interesting edit. This one is honestly just embarrassing, maybe one of the more embarrassing mistakes the dub has done up to this point. The official title of the dubbed episode 46 is Dragon's Vengeance. Okay, not a bad title name for an episode. The problem is that they misspelled the word vengeance. And no, I'm not kidding. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not kidding. They forgot the E after the G, and the official dubbed title of this episode has a spelling error in it. Not sure how this one slipped past the people who were in charge of naming it. Even the people who were in charge of airing the episode probably should have noticed this and said something. I feel like this is a mistake that is so hard not to catch that it absolutely baffles me that this mistake made it all the way to the TV. Is it worse than giving Arcana Egyptian god cards as card replacements? It might be, honestly. In episode 131, Rei has more glow around her body in the dub. This is the episode where Reira and Reiji duel, and Rei occasionally appears next to Reira almost as if she is guarding him from Reiji. Her outline in the original version is supposed to be her in a natural, unclothed state, so again, it's no surprise that the dub edited her appearance. In episode 147, during the final duel of the show between Yuya and Reiji, there is a scene that is completely omitted in the English dub. Yuya remembers all the people he harmed because he is Zark, and starts crying about it, feeling incredibly guilty about the whole situation. While it was a scene that I felt was a little out of place and wasn't too big of a fan of at the time, it was a scene that a lot of people liked because it was packed with emotion. However, for some odd reason, the dub completely deletes this scene. I am not sure what the reasoning for the deletion is, but if you watch the dubbed version, you won't find any Yuya monologue about self-guilt in this episode. Crow, crow, crow. Seeing legacy characters in Arc-V was awesome. Unfortunately, a few of them meet a grim end, including Crow, when he gets carded by the Battle Beast. Right before carding him, the Battle Beast leaps on Crow, and you can hear the sound of assumingly his ribs or some other kind of bone crack, implying that the Battle Beast's tackle broke Crow's ribs. This unnerving sound, to no one's surprise, is removed in the dub. Sometimes the dub makes changes that I feel are more darker than what the original source material was implying. This phenomenon occurs very rarely, but I feel this is another example of this instance. In episode 71, Yuya duels Duel Chaser 227. At the very end of the duel, Yuya attacks 227 directly with Odd Eye's Pendulum Dragon. In the original sequence, as you can see on screen, Odd Eyes slams his head on the back of the Duel Chaser's D-wheel. However, the dub changed this to Odd Eyes biting the back of the D-wheel. I don't know, I feel like a dragon slamming his head against something is not nearly as bad or nightmare fuel as him taking a bite out of it, especially considering how close he would be to biting the actual officer in this case, instead of just biting the D-wheel. Let me know what you guys think is worse, but it's definitely a peculiar edit. The exclusion of death is a trademark for Yu-Gi-Oh! Dubs, and in my opinion, one of the most brutal deaths and even scenes in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually happens in episode 95 of Arc-V. After a character named Sergei loses to Jack, he falls from his D-wheel and is barely alive, crawling on the ground. Well, some commoners see him and pick up wooden sticks and bats and, you guess it, beat him to death. Even the Japanese version didn't show the actual act of them killing him, but it is heavily implied. This whole exchange and scene is obviously removed in the English dub. One of my favorite scenes, because it's just justice in a nutshell, is when Yuzu pushes Roger and his head smacks into his desk. This takes place in episode 95 as well. Unfortunately, people watching the dub version wouldn't be able to enjoy this scene to the fullest. In the dub, Yuzu pushes Roger, but the scene of him smacking his head against the desk is completely removed, which is unfortunate, because it's one of the best karma scenes in the show. In episode 46, there is a scene where Serena is about to take off her clothes. Geez, that sounded wrong. So she can put on Yuzu's to try and distract Yuri, which really isn't an amazing plan in hindsight, but regardless, this scene is cut in the English dub. Tsukakage is right there, and so Yuzu in a panic tells Serena not to change in front of him, and they go behind an iceberg where they exchange clothes. None of these scenes occur in the English dub. Episode 126 was a great episode for story exposition. We got Zark flashbacks and learned how he became the bloodthirsty duelist that terrorized the world. During one of these duels, he stabs another duelist monster with Beast King Barbaros, and his opponent coughs up blood because of that. Usually any scene with blood gets removed or edited in the dub, and this scene is no different. The scene is completely removed in the English dub. One of the more comical scenes is when Yugioh is about to duel Serena and can't get over how closely she resembles Rin. And so, Yugioh repeatedly tries to hug her, and every time he does, she punches him in the face while making a nasty remark. Much like the Yuzu hitting Yuya with a fan sound that we listened to earlier, the dub also changes the sound effect in this situation. Instead of the crisp, smacking sound that the original version uses, the English dub once again uses a more child-friendly booping noise. I guess to take away the thought that these punches actually harmed Yugioh, even though, isn't that the purpose of a punch? Whatever, moving on. A plot point that I thought never made too much sense and was kind of brought out of nowhere was that the dragons were afraid of Rei. Yuya mentioned this during his duel against Jack in episode 146. I guess they were afraid of her because she was the one who banished them, but wouldn't anger be a more accurate emotion since these dragons literally destroyed everything and did not seem like the type of monsters to be afraid of something? I don't know, it was mentioned in that one moment and was literally never touched on again. The English dub decides not to even mention this plot point, and it goes completely untouched the entirety of the dub. I will actually give the English dub props on this one. Yu-Gi-Oh! Music is consistently really awesome to listen to. Usually that goes for both sub and dub. During many of Jack Atlas's duels, the English dub actually used music from the English dub of 5Ds during Arc-V. I wish the subbed version did something like that, even if it was only once, because Jack's theme is awesome, but regardless, Arc-V had an amazing soundtrack, so not using old themes from old shows wasn't really a big deal at all. Still, kudos to the English dub for doing something like that. There's another really funny scene between Yuzu and Yugioh in episode 62. Yuzu is beating Yugioh with a fan and scolding him for dumb comments he made. Yuzu then notices a family is watching her and she immediately gets flustered and embarrassed by her own behavior. This moment where she realizes a family is watching her and she apologizes to them is cut in the English dub. Not really sure why the dub did not want this scene in the episode. The only thing I can think of is that by showing remorse the situation seems more serious than just a comic relief scene. I don't even know if that makes sense, but speculating why certain scenes are removed in the dub is always a fun thing to do. Remember the scene when Dennis betrays Shun and the rest of the Lancers? Well, I guess it's not really a betrayal scene since he infiltrated as a spy, but more of a reveal scene. Either way, it's an awesome moment and one of my favorite scenes in Arc-V. Reiji makes a great comment about how he figured an enemy may have wormed their way into the Lancers, which is an awesome comment from him and just shows how intuitive Akiba Reiji is. Unfortunately, the English dub removes this line from him, making it seem like Reiji was clueless about Dennis and about how an enemy managed to join his group. I feel like this just takes away one of the best personality traits from Reiji, which is how intelligent the guy is. So it's definitely a shame the dub changed that line, which is honestly one of the best lines he has in the show, in my opinion. One of my favorite duels in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And my favorite in Arc-V is Sora vs. Shun. The rematch these two had unfortunately wasn't shown to us in full, but the ending was still pretty awesome with Sora getting his revenge and evening up the score at 1-1. There is a scene in the original of Sora's Frightfur Tiger slicing into Shun's Raid Raptors with the scissor protruding from its stomach. This is a scene that the English dub must have found to be a bit too violent, as it was removed in the English dub, along with any slashing sound effects. Might as well end it with everyone's favorite combo of Yugioh and Yuzu. Man, they've been on this list a lot. Episode 54 is a good episode for the plot, since we get a lot of conversation between Yugioh and Yuzu. After they are teleported to the Synchro Dimension, at one point Yugioh sees Rin inside Yuzu, since all the Bracelet Girls look similar. Well, for some odd reason, add this to the list of scenes that are removed in the English dub. The Rin outline inside Yuzu never appears for some conspicuous reason. I honestly can't even think of any reason why they may have removed this moment, so if you have any ideas, please let me know down below. Well, guys, that about wraps it up. I really hope you enjoyed the for now conclusion to what has been a really fun miniseries. I mean, I did 50 things for the original Yu-Gi-Oh!, so maybe I'll go back and do 25 more for each spin-off, but for the foreseeable future, this series is probably concluded. Please leave all your thoughts down below, and if you have any more things the Arc-V dub changed or censored, please feel free to leave that down below as well. Really looking forward to hearing from all of you. Special thanks to my Platinum tier patrons, Alexa Baker, Christopher Johannes Bouska, Glen McGookin, Jorge Carrillo, D01, and James Rose, and to my Diamond tier patrons, Soledsnak and bouldergeist. Thank you so much for supporting me over on Patreon. Really means the world to me. And thank you all so much for watching as well. And thank you for the constant support. Would not be here without all of you. I will talk to you down below. Thank you for watching once again, and I hope you have an amazing day.
Bouska